We've got a number of people that are going to speak to you, people that have got personal experience of fertility issues and people that are supporting us. So thank you, and I'm just about to hand over to Anya to talk about the campaign. Thank you.
Good evening. What a privilege to be here. Fantastic. My name is Anya Sizer. I'm the regional organiser for the Fertility Network. And I'm also a mother of 2 IVF children and 1 adopted child. One of the IVF children is over there. So as I stand here before you, I can definitely say, having worked in the sector for about 12 years and having gone through IVF myself, that IVF and infertility is by far one of the hardest things that a person can go through, and it affects people on every single level. So that is why we are determined at Fertility Network to make a difference and to make IVF available for all who are eligible. Having worked in the sector for about 12 years, you have to sort of learn to be professional a lot of the time and not get too emotionally upset by every single story. But there was one patient that spoke to me about a year ago and who absolutely broke my heart. And it's because of that patient that we started doing the Right to Try campaign, which led to the Scream campaign. The patient that I met at the fertility show stood before me in absolute tears with her husband, and she had tried for several months, several years to conceive, and nothing had happened, and they'd visited the GP and been told that IVF was the only way forward. The problem was that she needed to lose some of the weight, and so she was told to go away and lose a bit of weight and come back once that had happened. So she dutifully went off and for months and months really worked hard to lose the weight and to get as healthy as she possibly could. Finally she went back to the GP, and the GP turned around and said, "I'm so sorry, but the funding has been cut in this area and you are no longer eligible for IVF." So this couple stood before me at the fertility show, absolutely in floods of tears. They didn't have any money at all saved. They were renting. They had nothing. They had no friends and relatives that were able to just give them some money. So that GP had basically said to them, "This is the end of the road for you." And they broke my heart. And it was because of them that we came up with the Right to Try campaign, because at Fertility Network we believe that everyone who is eligible has the right to try for a family, and we will fight for that. The Right to Try was last year, and we did it around Mother's Day, because often that's one of the toughest days of the year for those facing infertility. And we caused a splash on Twitter, and we did a thunderclap, and we got people talking, and Louise Brown, the first ever IVF child, came out and supported us, and it was a really good campaign. But then our friends at Saatchi said to us, "We want to make this even bigger," and we came up with the Scream campaign. And the Scream campaign is amazing because at the very heart of it, the tagline says that the screams of childbirth are known and celebrated, but the silent screams of infertility are just as important. And that's what we're here to do today, to give a voice to the voiceless and to scream on their behalf. So the Scream campaign was launched just a few weeks ago, and as we've said already, we're nearly at 84,000 signatures. And the response has been fantastic. People saying that for the first time they feel that they have a voice. And we've even had people come down today from Birmingham because they're determined to be here. So why does the Scream campaign matter? Well, there's a few reasons. Firstly, infertility is not a lifestyle issue. It is a disease as defined by the World Health Organization. And as such, it needs to be treated medically. Secondly, it has a huge emotional toll. Paula's going to talk a little bit more about this in a minute. But the emotional toll of people going through infertility is massive. In one of our surveys alone, 90% of people said that they'd experienced depression when going through long-term infertility. It affects people on every single level and leads to huge social isolation. So the emotional toll is massive. The toll on the workplace is massive, with around 19% of people saying that they'd reduced their hours or even had to quit work when they're going through fertility treatment. And it also has a huge detrimental effect on relationships, with around 70% of people that we surveyed saying that it had a really detrimental effect on how they and their partner were communicating. So to add to all of this, to add to this huge onslaught, a financial burden that many thousands of people can't afford, we say is unjust, and we will campaign so that everyone has the right to try. So that's what the Scream campaign is about. We've been asking people to collect their screams, we've been asking people to sign the pledge, and we will take this to Parliament, and we will hopefully get a debate and people discussing this. But at Fertility Network, we are here to support you and to give that voice to the voiceless. So thank you for coming, and I'm going to hand over to the very wonderful Paula Sherriff right now.
Thank you very much, Anya, and thank you for everything that you do. Hi everybody, for those who don't know me, I'm Paula Sherriff. I'm the MP for Dewsbury. I'm also the Shadow Mental Health Minister, and in my spare time I'm the Chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Women's Health. So I do have a speech. It's been a day of many speeches for me, I'm afraid, today. So I will be kind of reading this speech out, but please understand every word comes from the heart. So thank you very much for inviting me along to talk to you today regarding infertility, which is an issue very close to my own heart. I've been involved with the charity now through Anya for a couple of years. And I'm proud today, as a member of Labour's front bench health team, to be supporting the call for fair access to IVF services. And as many of you may already know, a future Labour government have pledged to support the 1 in 6 couples affected by infertility by funding IVF for all whom are eligible, providing access to medical treatment for the many, not the few. You may have heard that phrase before. Labour believes that a medical issue shouldn't be treated according to postcode or finances, but according to need, and that is exactly why I'm proud to stand here today and support this campaign. Thank you. And today is especially poignant as it's World Mental Health Day, a day where we recognise the prevalence of mental health issues and seek to combat stigma surrounding them. Infertility is one such area affecting mental health on a huge scale, as Anya alluded to a moment ago. Indeed, according to Fertility Network's own research, 90% of those affected had suffered from depression, and alarmingly, 42% talked about having experienced suicidal feelings. And the emotional toll of not being able to conceive is quite simply one as a society that we mustn't and cannot ignore or minimise. Infertility is a medical issue, one which affects the individual holistically, causing social isolation, potential breakdown of relationships, and feelings of hopelessness. And neither are such experiences limited to women alone. It's great to see some guys here this evening, and I think it's really important that we also consider the feelings of men. We know that they have reported feelings of worthlessness, helplessness and shame just as deeply as their partners, with often less support and comprehension. And infertility simply does not discriminate. It affects so many couples that we cannot just idly stand by and allow medical support to be removed. And that's what's happening at the moment. Adding crippling financial burdens onto such a group of people is not only unfair but also unethical. An average IVF cycle in the private sector will cost anything between £5,000 and £8,000, and with the National Institute for Clinical Excellence, or NICE, stating that 3 cycles are the optimum chance of conceiving, we cannot expect everyone to afford such costly treatment. And we know that sadly some people actually need more than 3 cycles. And I know as an MP it frustrates me hugely that we have this NICE guidance when only a very small percentage of CCGs are now actually adhering to that. And very tragically, and I don't use that word lightly, there are now an increasing number of CCGs who are no longer offering any cycles at all. So women and their partners are sadly left to have to deal with that infertility, and particularly at a time when mental health services are in crisis, so that if somebody did need to get that support from mental health services, it may be that they would have to wait an enormous amount of time to access that specialist support. So put simply, we are pricing out a huge portion of society and severely restricting their rights, yes, their rights to try for a family. Now, the long-term mental health implications of such a situation are potentially catastrophic and have far-reaching effects on the rest of society, not least of which, ironically, will be the financial repercussions of increased need for NHS mental health provision and the impact of relationship breakdown. Cutting IVF from regional budgets is merely a short-term solution, which in the long term would undoubtedly prove more costly for society as a whole. And if we don't act now to keep IVF within the remit of the NHS, we will move towards the creation of a two-tier society with many couples prohibited, not through lack of need, but lack of comprehension. And in the 40th year since the first ever IVF child was conceived, and the 70th year of our incredible NHS, which was conceived by a Labour government, we stand at a crossroad. Either we allow the continuing rollout of cuts to NHS funding of IVF, or we fight, and we call for a full parliamentary debate on this issue. And I see one of my colleagues on my left, Steve McCabe, who I think is going to speak in a minute, and I know that he'll support me and support us all in calling for a full and frank parliamentary debate where we can call out those who are preventing women from obtaining what is their right to have treatment for a disease. So our NHS was set up to be a provision of care from cradle to grave, and unless we act now, a large section of society will not even be afforded the chance to access the cradle at all. So today, and finally from me, I join Fertility Network in calling for the implementation of the medical guidance that we already have, but also in calling for equality, and probably most importantly of all, for compassion and dignity and respect for those whom are affected, and to scream for IVF for all those that are eligible. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much.
Absolute privilege to have Paula with us. Thank you so much. She's got to leave now. I'm going to hand over to a very dear friend of mine now, who is one of my heroes in life, Jessica Hepburn. Exactly, she should get a cheer. Jessica's amazing. I don't even know how to... she swims channels, she sets up fertility fests. She's just fab. And she's just a very nice person as well. And she's going to be speaking to us today from the heart about the emotional toll of trying for a family. So thank you very much, Jessica Hepburn.
Thank you, Anya. Beautiful speech, Paula, if you're still here. It's hard to explain the pain of losing something you never had. Something that was never more than an expectation, a dream, or at most a cluster of cells. It's not like I'm dying or on the verge of a humanitarian disaster. People don't need to start having sex to save the human race, because I can't have children. I know it's a hole in my life that society finds difficult to understand. I call it the pain of never, and these are its symptoms. If you've got them, you'll know. Never feeling like a real woman because you can't do what every other woman seemingly finds so easy to do. Never being able to feel happy for someone when they announce they're pregnant without feeling sad for yourself at the same time. Never being able to admit that you've been in the loo crying about it because you don't want people to pity you. Never being invited to a baby shower, christening, or children's party without it hurting. Never not being invited to a baby shower, christening, or children's party because people are trying to spare your feelings without that hurting even more. Never being able to make a pregnancy announcement to your family and friends and have them throw their arms around you in warm congratulations. Never being able to legitimately eat for two, or buy a cool maternity dress, or go into a bookstore and buy What to Expect when you're expecting. Although I did once, and then I miscarried and felt like a fraud. Never feeling the first kick of life inside you. Never being able to say, I think my waters have broken, or bring me gas and air. Is that what people really say? Never knowing that. Never having a baby placed in your chest and saying hello for the first time. Never being able to breastfeed and use your body for what it was built for. Never being able to write an out of office that says, I'm away on maternity leave. Never being able to see your child's first steps, or first words, or first day at school, or first anything. Never being able to share these things with your friends and growing distant because of it. Never seeing someone else's photos of their children on Facebook without wishing you had photos to post too. Never hearing anyone call you mum. That's the pain of never. I don't know if any of you have experienced the pain of never, but I can guarantee that either you or someone you know has. We have an incredible science invented in this country 40 years ago that gives people a chance to get over the pain. It doesn't work for everyone, every time, but it does give everyone a chance. Maybe you know someone who it's given the gift of a family. So I want to ask you this. Why, when we are a country that prides itself on having a national health service, wouldn't we want to give everyone a chance to try and get over the pain of never, regardless of where they live and their financial circumstances? That's what a fair, empathetic, progressive society would want. And that's what we are, isn't it?
Oh, that was cool. Thank you so much. That was fantastic. I'm going to ask Steve McCabe MP to come up and say a few words now. Steve has been an incredible support to the IVF community and has had a first reading of a bill about IVF through Parliament. He has his second reading coming up, but we're hugely grateful to him, and I was even speaking to someone today, one of his constituents, who said what a massive difference he's made to their story. So we're very grateful to Steve for coming and speaking to us now. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. It's lovely to see you all. Can I begin by just saying to Fertility Network UK, I mean, well done for everything you do, but for organising, putting so much energy into the Scream for IVF campaign. And it's lovely to see that people have come from so many different parts of the country. I bumped into Della and Dean, my constituents from Birmingham, just as I came along there, and I want to just tell you something about them. Della and Dean are typical of the people that folk like me meet. It was Della and Dean who helped me to understand why I should be involved in this and why I should be campaigning about it, because it was their account, their story, their personal circumstances that made me realise what an issue this is. And I think that's the important thing for something like IVF. I think it's very easy to bracket it alongside all these other things that we're supposed to be concerned about, and just to push it to one side and forget that behind every IVF story there's a very personal story that really needs to be told and needs to be listened to. Now, people have said already that Louise Brown, the first baby, turned 40 earlier this year, and that should have been a cause for screaming celebrations. We should have been out there cheering from the rafters. But of course, the real truth of Louise's 40th birthday is it reminds us of just how much we've gone backwards over that period of time. And in the last decade in particular, and in the last 5 years, we've seen a dramatic reduction in the availability of IVF. Something like, I think it's 175 clinical commissioning groups now across the country not complying at all with the NICE guidelines. Only 4 clinical commissioning groups in the entire country actually bothering to comply with them. And you know, I can't get my head round how in a country that has a national health service and has had it for 70 years, we can be in a situation where the cost of a treatment, which is broadly the same across the country, can vary by about 5,000 quid depending on where you are. That tells me not there's something wrong with IVF, but there's something wrong with the way it's organised and commissioned and delivered, and it seems to me that's what we should be concentrating on. Now, I think as Paula said, you know, we're talking about a condition that affects 1 in 6 couples, about 11 million people. And I just ask you, if there were 11 million people who were being turned away for treatment for cancer or for diabetes, what kind of scream do you think you would be hearing then? What kind of outrage do you think would be provoked then? But that's exactly what people are being asked to accept when it comes to IVF. And I kind of, you know, I struggle with this. I'm not into bashing and abusing health service bureaucrats, but I do wonder how we've got to a situation where it can be right for a health service bureaucrat to decide that your male partner's body mass index should be a determinant of whether or not you get treatment, or whether the fact that your partner had a child by another relationship 20 years ago should be a reason for counting you out, or whether they have decided to change the NICE age guidelines so that magically you don't qualify. I wonder, how is it right that that is the way we're making medical decisions? It seems to me it's not right. It's plain wrong. Just as it's plain wrong that you can qualify for IVF if you live in Luton today, but if you move to Birmingham tomorrow, you'll be denied the very same treatment that you were getting yesterday. How on earth can anyone think that is remotely right? So it seems to me what we need, and what I'm trying to pursue with this bill that Anya mentioned, is we need full compliance with the NICE guidance, and we need an end to regional variations. We need a national benchmark price for IVF so that we get rid of this 5,000 variation in cost, and we need it now. You know, I don't know how long it takes, but they tell me they've been working on it for 2 years. Well, you know, if I wanted something fixed, I think I could fix it a little bit faster than that, to be perfectly honest. And of course, we need the same entitlement to treatment for this condition as you would get for any other illness on the NHS. So, look folks, I know I said at the beginning, it's about people's personal stories, and I don't pretend that I can fully come to terms with what some people are having to live with. But what I do say is, we're going to keep on screaming until government ministers and health bureaucrats take notice of what's been said. Treatment for fertility problems on the NHS should be based on need and nothing else. Not on your postcode, not in your pay packet, but on need. And that's what we're going to work towards. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next reading of the bill is November 23rd, is it? Yeah, so all the support for you on November 23rd. I'm going to invite my husband, Damien, to come up and speak now. We at Fertility Network are really determined that men are given a voice as well, because so often men are the overlooked ones in this whole scenario. So I'm very proud to introduce my husband, Damien, to you.
Hi, good evening. I really feel like this is going to make a difference. I don't know about you, but I think this is going to make a difference. You being here is going to make a difference as well. And everyone signing up to the petition. I can't believe nearly 84,000 people, just astonishing. Annie and I have been married nearly just over 20 years. I nearly forgot our anniversary there, wasn't good. And we've been trying for a long time, about a year and a half, nearly 2 years to conceive. And and efforts, nothing was working. And straight away we were put into quite a dehumanising experience, which was, being told by our GP that through all the tests that we'd had, that I found out there's an issue with myself, but being told just by a GP that it wasn't going to work and that we weren't going to have children, and that was the end of our story, and that was the end of our chance to have children. And of course we're devastated, we're heartbroken, and straight away thrown into a system where I felt marginalised, I felt helpless, I felt that there's nothing that could be done for us. And the awful thing is, what we're learning, isn't it, that the only opportunity that comes about is through the financial means, and not actually through the actual need and the desire of a couple to actually want to have a family. So we went through several tests and operations, and we were told eventually that our chances were about a 1 in 125,000 chance of conceiving. And it was only through the generosity of a relative that we were able to pursue IVF and actually pay for a round of IVF, even though we were told by all the professionals involved, the embryologists involved, it was a lost cause, and we were doing it just to close the door. And absolutely amazingly, the first cycle worked, which was an absolute miracle. But I do remember the whole process leading up to that. Even when we went to the clinics, everyone was always referred to in terms of the presumption was always that it was an issue with the actual woman. The problem was with the woman, and actually the men's issues are completely overlooked. To great personal cost and financial cost, I had to pursue counselling. I had to pursue other ways in which I wasn't burdening my wife, and we weren't burdening each other with the pain and the distress that we were going through. And for it to work the first time was absolutely incredible and beyond what we'd expected at all. And we went through IVF 4 more times after that. 3 times, unfortunately, we miscarried, and the 5th time, an amazing son Barney was born. And what we were just so grateful for, and was that we had IVF open to us. It was an option, despite being told we couldn't go for it, or we shouldn't go for it, and wanting to close the door. It actually opened up the opportunity and gave us hope. Literally gave us hope, and it actually gave us the opportunity to have a family. And the emotional burden, and I'm sure a lot of people will attest to it, the emotional burden is something, and the financial burden, and the physical burden as well. All of those things are brought together in IVF treatment, and it's an appalling thing to go through. But people should not be denied the chance to go through that treatment. Should not at all. And so what's really, really important about this campaign, and I'm so proud of my wife really pushing and working so hard with this campaign, just so proud for the fact that actually something that was so negative and so difficult at the time, it gave us 2 amazing children. We adopted a 3rd amazing child, but what it gave us was this opportunity in the first place, and no one should be denied that opportunity. And I think this is why this campaign is so important. As other people have said, IVF is not a lifestyle choice. It is actually an illness. It affects you in any such way that an illness can affect you. And I'm just so proud to be able to stand here today and just to say this campaign will make a difference. We will see people actually given the chance to actually, and even if that chance means that the IVF doesn't work, at least they've been given that chance. They've been given that chance to be able to have closure on what we know is very, very, very hard and very, very difficult for so many people. And still, the resources for men is so few. And only recently have there been Facebook groups and campaign groups helping men suffering fertility issues as well. And the devastation is just, I know the number of times that I've cried, the number of times that I've asked for help, the number of times that people have misunderstood me, and the number of times that GPs have just brushed me aside. And we just know today that this is a really important step. and I'm really proud of this, and I hope it's going to continue to work as well. Thank you.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well done. I'm going to ask Lucy to come up and speak very briefly about the involvement that Saatchi have given us. And they have been the most extraordinary team to work with. They really have. Their passion and commitment and excitement and enthusiasm has been wonderful. So I just want Lucy to come up and say a few words on behalf of the team as well.
Thank you so much, Anya. I mean, I have to say, that's reflected back at you guys completely. Your passion is absolutely unending, and you are an inspiration to me, like totally. I've worked with Anya and with Fertility Network for a number of years, and we've been engaged in the fertility space for about 5 years. We know what an emotional roller coaster this is for people. So when the chance came up to be able to do this and make a real change, there were absolutely no questions asked that was what we're going to do. It's been an absolute pleasure, and let's hope that we can get this debated, get this moving. This could be any one of us, and no one should be denied the right to try.
Right, I'm going to hand over to my daughter, who's not going to be nervous, going to be fine. My daughter Hope's going to say a very few words, just to talk about what it's like to be an IVF child.
Hi, my name is Hope Sizer. I am 15 years old, and my mum and dad were told they would never have children. Indeed, doctors told my dad he had 1 in 125,000 chance of ever having children. I'm so thankful they didn't listen to that doctor and gave it a go. My mum has told me a lot about needles, tablets, and the operations that an IVF cycle needs. A lot. But more than that, she has told me how lucky she felt to be able to try, and that every day she is thankful for the science of IVF and that she has let her be a mum. So today I will stand up and say thank you to all the doctors, nurses and embryologists who made. But let's support all those people who still need our help and who can't afford thousands of pounds to try for a family. IVF gave my family hope, and now me and my family want the same for everyone else. Thank you so much.
What we're going to do now is we're going to play a little clip of some of the screams. This is going to cause mass confusion down the street, but we're going to play some of the screams that have been sent in to us, and then what we'd love to do is do some group screams and get some screams from you guys as well. So can you block your ears if you're in any way sensitive? The screams of childbirth are loud, known and celebrated. The screams of infertility are just as important. That is why we scream, that is why we will continue to scream until change happens. Thank you so much for coming. We are so proud to be part of this community, and please stay, and we're going to get some group screams now, I think. Thank you very much.